Right, now let's say hi to Stephen Booth, the head of the Britain in the World project at Policy Exchange. Stephen, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So we look at what's been said and done in America this week between the Prime Minister and the President. But the fact is, Stephen, it's been crystal clear that a US trade deal was a fading ambition. And it's been clear for some time now, hasn't it?
Yes, well, you said that in your opening remarks. It probably didn't come as a surprise that Biden suggested it's not a top priority, and that's been the case for a long time. I guess the thing to add to that is it's not simply the UK that's finding that. It's a policy of the US administration more broadly. No one is negotiating a deep and comprehensive trade agreement with the US at this time because.
Yes.
Of the government's domestic priorities there and the domestic constraints in Congress and so on.
Yes, and even aside, though, from the constraints, the very real constraints that you mentioned, a Congress which has been very tricky to navigate for President Biden, and a list of other crises which are higher up the agenda, dealing with COVID, for example, and there are others. Well, the fact is, yes, Donald Trump, the last president, he was keen on delivering a deal, said so, but even that couldn't be a fully comprehensive agreement because one of those takes years, Stephen, don't they?
Well, it depends. It's not necessarily the case they have to take years. I think there was always going to be question marks over how quickly a US deal could be done because some of the issues are quite complicated, particularly when you get around sort of domestic opinion on things like agricultural liberalisation and so on. And there are some UK concerns about the NHS and so on. But I think that Donald Trump clearly was in the market for a deal, and I think saw sort of a strategic value in that as well, doing that quickly. And I think that the logic of a UK-US deal remains in the medium to long term. I think, as you say, it's a matter of priorities. I think economically, I think everyone would recognise it's unlikely to be transformative sort of in the aggregate, but for certain sectors and certain industries and on certain issues, it could certainly be an important component for the UK and the US. I think particularly on sectors, sort of the new economic sectors, sort of financial services, data and technology, where I think both sides actually have a lot in common. But
so many obstacles to overcome. On agriculture, as you say, America, and not just the president, but Congress, is famously protective of American interests, including agricultural interests when it comes to these deals. I mean, America first wasn't just the Donald Trump slogan. It was the way that Washington thought and still does think to a large extent, isn't it? Now, what about this idea of an alternative plan, if you can call it that, for a US-Mexico-Canada deal that Britain could sign up to? Is that realistic in your judgment?
Well, it's certainly an interesting idea. I guess the question is whether that really would be a sort of short-term alternative to the kind of UK-US deal we've been discussing, because I think it would certainly still involve lots of complications in terms of still getting the US to engage in that kind of arrangement. And obviously then you've got three parties to deal with as opposed to just one. I think the interesting thing to note is that the UK is already sort of in negotiations with both Canada and Mexico in terms of improving our trade agreements that we already have with those countries.
Yes.
And the other aspect of that is that we are actually sort of seeking to join another regional trade agreement in the Asia Pacific called the CPTPP, which Canada and Mexico are both already members of. And the US administration under previous administrations was keen on developing that. And if the UK were to join that might be quite a good place for the UK to encourage the US to re-engage in a trade relationship with the UK as part of a regional grouping, because as you've seen with broader developments in the Indo-Pacific space recently on the security side, I think that having the US engaged on the trade side would certainly be in the UK's long-term interest.
Yes. So the idea that was floated overnight, it's the front of lots of newspapers today, this US-Mexico-Canada deal with Britain somehow getting involved. You say it's no short-term solution. Is it any kind of solution? I mean, there is no mechanism for accession to that deal, is there? And if somehow it could be engineered that Britain could be part of that, the benefits would be pretty limited.
Well, I think, I wouldn't necessarily be hung up on the accession process. Ultimately, these things, if there is the political will to do it, a way can always be found in terms of the legal side of things. But I think, the bigger question is what is in the UK interest. And I think that such a deal, you'd have to look at the fine print. I think that's something that people would have to do. But in terms of the broader strategic questions, clearly there is value to being in a trade deal with the US and those other partners.
Yes.
Because it locks in, it gives predictability to business. It allows you to develop conversations around areas of interest such as technology, financial services, and data, where I think the UK and other sort of Western democracies will be looking to try and develop the rules of the future together, because these are increasingly contested issues. So I think that the strategic logic's still there. I think, again, the means, I think, still look quite complicated.
Yeah, to put it mildly. Stephen Booth, head of Britain in the World Policy Exchange. Thank you.